The ECU, or the engine control unit, on the B207 2.0 turbo Saab 9.3s from 2003 onward are a very common failure point. Because the ECU is bolted straight to the intake manifold of the engine vibration over time as well as heat and heat cycles cause it to fail. There are really three things you can do to help prevent or at least prolong the life of your ECU. Number one would be driving without the plastic engine cover on, which you can see I always do right here. Number two would be getting an ECU spacer kit, which is what I currently have installed. I have a video on that in the top corner. Number three is what we're doing today, which is the ultimate solution, and that is an ECU relocation kit, meaning we're going to be taking the ECU off of the engine and relocating it up here. Let's quickly go over what's in the kit here before we install it, as well as talk about some other things we'll need for the job. You can buy this kit globally at maptune.com. It's provided and made by Taiwan, Scandinavia, Asia Corporation. So big thank you to them for developing this amazing product for these cars to help prolong the life of the ECU. But we have our bracket here, so this is what's going to bolt to the radiator support to hold the ECU in place. That'll be one of our last steps, some bolts associated with that. We have some heat shrink tube, we have some corrugated, wire protector, some zip ties, and then we have 5 new extended cables. So there are 5 wires that we need to extend as part of this job, which is the biggest part of the job. We'll go over that during the install, of course. And we have a new ground cable, and they've kindly included some new tape that we can use to rewrap the harnesses once we're done with all the work. Now, on top of this, really the only tools you'll need that are specialty tools. I have a lighter, of course, to shrink the heat shrink tube, and I have a soldering iron. And the last thing, I almost forgot, a good pair of wire strippers. So let's go ahead and get started. First thing we kind of need to do is disconnect the negative battery terminal, and then we can go ahead with starting to take apart everything here, unwrapping it, etc. Let's get to work. So I'm going to unplug the coolant temperature sensor, both ECU connectors, and then also the throttle body connector and this bypass valve connector. While I do this, I'd like to mention that once we get the new product installed, I am doing a before and after test with a heat gun with temperature checks, so we can confirm how big of a difference this actually makes. These connectors can really fight you if they haven't been removed in a while, so just be careful not to break them. Bypass valve and throttle body. There are a variety of cable ties in here. I can see actually one of mine is broken just from heat over time. It's just disintegrating as I'm trying to take it off. Trying to do that without making a mess. Look at that. That is as fragile as can be. So we're going to cut these off that are holding different harnesses together. Next, we can pop off the top of this cover here. There's just a few tabs, and I just broke one of them on mine. That is very sad. And before I do that, actually, I'm going to remove, there are 2 10mm nuts that hold this whole bracket, this cable bracket to the engine. I'm going to remove those. Well, after a lot of fighting and just brittle plastic, it unfortunately broke in a couple pieces, but that is a future problem. Next, I'm going to feed the right side connector under this fuel line. Now I'm going to remove the actual ECU from the car, so there are 4 10mm that hold that in. Since I'm in here, I'm just going to finish with the uninstallation, I guess you could say, of my spacer kit. Next, there's a plug for the AC sensor right down here on the side of the airbox. We're going to pull that out and disconnect it. And now we can begin unwrapping this tape. So now we have this all disconnected. We have 2 wires for our coolant temperature sensor, and then we have 2 wires that look like they go in the harness over to the MAF. And you can see there's a pretty clear delineation here of a vast majority of the wires go over, to the right side of the engine, but then there's these 4 wires that come out of the ECU plug that are not allowing us to pull this plug over to the other side of the engine bay where we need to mount it. So that means that we need to cut it. I'm going to cut these 4 wires about 4 inches from the base of the connector here. Okay, so that now completely cuts off our coolant temperature sensor, so I will set that to the side for now. Like I said, now I can start pulling this over here. I'm going to begin undoing some more tape. I'm going to try to undo this whole host of tape here. And now would also be a good time to mention that if you have an 03 to 05 car, I have an 03 or 06 plus. There are 2 different kits because the wiring is different, from my understanding, between those 2 different sets of years. So if you have an 06 plus, this process might be slightly different. There's one more wire I need to cut here, and it is this yellow-green wire. This is coming out of our right connector, and it runs across to our boost solenoid. You can see that's just kind of preventing me from truly separating these the rest of the way. So what I'm going to do is compare the lengths here, snip that. And that should give me some freedom to pull that out a bit, as well as, you know, kind of fully separate this some more. So I'm going to do a little bit more reorganizing here to try to get these all, you know, not look like a rat's nest, and we'll jump back when we're ready to do a little more work. We now can pull aside our 5 wires that we need to extend, so I'm going to start with that. We're just going to start by crimping off a little bit, just like so. Now I want to preface this part by saying I am electrically challenged, and I am not very good at this. So I have practiced as much as I could on some spare wire I have. We're going to do this the best I can. Please do not bully me in the comments. So we have our 5 spare wires. The colors do not match 100% perfect, but it's pretty clear what goes to what. So we have our blue wire that's going to go to our blue and white wire here. I put some solder on this end, a good bit of it, and then just connected up the new wire, and then basically just melted the solder to connect them together. It doesn't look pretty, but it functions. I'll prove it here with my multimeter, so I feel pretty good about it if it's multimeter saying it's good. So I have one end on the old wire right here, and then I'll put the other end onto the split new wire right here. I gave it the little pull test, and we're good. So I'm going to do the same thing with the other 4 that are here, and we can put heat shrink on them. All right, we got all 5 done, tested all 5 for continuity with my multimeter, so we're good to go. They definitely got better as time went on, I can tell you that much. So our next step is to put some heat shrink over this to cover it up and protect it, and we can move on. All right, this connector has kind of 2 halves, so I'm going to organize it a bit. We have our one connector that goes to the throttle body here, which is all tangled around, and we have our extended wires, and then we have the rest of the untouched wires. So what I'm going to start doing is just kind of wrap these up probably to about the point I cut it, and then we can start with connecting up these to the correct sensors. Let's finish off our first connection, which is going to be for the boost bypass valve right here. So that connector we cut earlier, you might remember I kind of fed it around because it was intertwined in between here. So now that red and green wire is free, and this can ideally just kind of thread through here once it's done. So I think what I'm going to do is, you can see the red and green wire comes from way down here, whereas this wire obviously comes from the new connector. So I think what I'll do is just kind of pull on this and see just like how much how much extra I can cut off. I don't want to cut too much off, so what I'll probably do is maybe cut it like right there to give myself plenty of leeway just in case. Before I forget, I'll put my heat shrink tube over here for this new connection, and I'm going to go ahead and solder this connection right here for this. That one is all good to go. The wire is definitely longer than it needs to be, but better to be too long than too short. Now we can reattach our severed coolant temperature sensor. So this was the blue and black wires. So same thing again, we'll just solder them, and then we'll put some heat shrink over top of them to get them down. These two are reattached. This is the last two wires of soldering we need to do. So we have red and green right here for the, I believe they both go to the MAF. So we're gonna do that now. Again, just make sure they're not tangled. Mine have all been separated. I've been trying to keep it organized as I go, but two more to solder, and then we'll be done with the soldering. Got the last two done, so our wiring is complete. Now at this point, it'd probably be a good idea to start the car and confirm everything works, but there's just so many loose wires. We haven't even put the ground cable on yet. There's a lot of wiring cleanup we need to do now. I confirmed that all of them had continuity and you know, power is bridging the solder I made. So next we need to start by wrapping this up. I'm gonna start over here. So we have our coolant temperature sensor, which needs to kind of clip into this heat shrink or this corrugated tubing here. And we're just gonna start wrapping up down this way. And we'll eventually, you know, of course, get to this whole mess over here. So I'm tucking this in right to where this kind of like factory additional heat wrap, I want to tuck that in there a little bit, just like that. You know, my precision on it, it's not going to be perfect, but I'm just wrapping this up loosely because the old tape just kind of fell off it, so I'm kind of repairing that. And now that we've got it caught up to there, I can start wrapping up this way. For now, I'm going to stop and just plug in our coolant temperature sensor. Well, I started wrapping this earlier, but I'm going to finish wrapping it now. So again, we just want to make sure we're keeping everything separated that should be separated. So we have this connector, try and pull it way over there as far as I can. So you want to make sure to importantly keep the throttle cable separate. So I'm going to wrap this all the way up to this kind of junction up here, and then we'll go ahead and do the throttle. I have to admit, this is the part of the job that I think I've been waiting for most, because this is going to look so satisfying when it's done. There is definitely a little bit more wire than what I need, as you can see, but I'm just going to keep wrapping for now, and we'll deal with that extra wire. We'll probably just kind of tuck it in there somewhere as needed. I would say that looks super amazing. Let's keep going. I'm gonna do this off camera, so we need to wrap this one the whole way up to this junction, and then the little corrugated plastic piece, we need to separate this harness. I'll show you what it looks like when it's done, you know, at some point up here, and then slip the corrugated plastic over it, because this is the sensor that we need to run back over here. All right, so I have this cleaned up pretty well. Everything is wrapped up. I'm very happy with how it all looks. So I've kind of got everything I've basically got everything routed how it should be. So we just have the connector for the MAF and temp sensor running up here, and then the boost bypass valve comes down here. We have our original ground that comes down here, and now we can add our aftermarket or our new ground as part of the kit, which is going to connect to the same bolt here that the factory ground was on, with the factory ground as well. So both grounds are going to be hidden here with a bolt supplied by the kit. We're going to then run that ground up through here and then down there. Just feed that up here and down through here. Let's install the ECU stand. So this is kind of cleverly designed. You can see there's one bolt hole, two bolt holes, The way that this goes in is just like this. So you can see this hole lines up here, and then there's a little bracket back here that also lines up with a threaded nut on the back. So these just screw straight in very, very easily. This is so well designed that no sort of drilling or anything is needed to install this. So great use of some factory space. And now our ECU. So you can see that the bolts that go in, there's two on the bottom that are here and then the two up top. So if you look at the bracket, you can see that on the driver's side over here is where these two smaller ones are at. And I almost forgot my ground cable. So I'm going to install the ground cable, routing it underneath this intake tube. I'm going to install it on this top corner bolt right here. And we've got our two big connectors here. So the one with the throttle body is going to go on top. So I'm going to start with the other one, which has the AC switch. I'm going to run this underneath the charge pipe. This one's going on the bottom here. There we go. That one's in. I'm going to run it just kind of down under some of this stuff. You want to be very careful that it's not in a spot where it's going to get caught on the serpentine belt over here. It shouldn't, but just be wary of where you're routing it, that nothing's going to possibly eat it. You know, fans as well. And now our top connector. Looks like we're just barely able to do this without pulling out the charge pipe, so that's good. 3 zip ties included with the kit. I'm gonna put one right here on this mess, second one down here, and the third one right over here. Tighten both these down. We're just about done here. Now I need to reconnect my battery cover piece. I'm gonna have to get one of these at the junkyard unless someone watching happens to have one. If so, please email me or DM me off a parts car or something. I'm gonna just connect it for now, then we're gonna reconnect our battery. All right, come on, baby. Let's hope she starts, no check engine light or anything. Coolant temp works, we should be all good if so. Oh yeah! Hey all, past me here. Before we got the kit installed, I went ahead and I wanted to do a test with a temperature gun to see the temperature difference on the ECU, both with the the spacer kit as it is now, and then also how it looks with it relocated up here when we're done. So first we're going to do this test. I'm going to take the car on an identical loop that's probably going to be about 6 miles both times, and as soon as we get home, we'll pop the hood and check the temperature of the ECU. So keep in mind, again, I do have a spacer kit on this currently, and I'm also running with the engine cover off. So if you're running this with the car without the spacer kit, you're probably gonna have higher temperatures than what I'm about to test, but just keep in mind that that difference won't be as severe as you would if you had the engine cover on or if you didn't have a spacer kit. Anyways, I'm gonna do that drive and then we'll check the temperature.
A few minutes later.
We did a 6.5 mile loop. Ambient temperature was 88 degrees. This side of the ECU is right at about 136 degrees, 130, 126, between 125 and 135 depending on where the gun is at. So I think it's safe to say that we're at about 130 degrees right now. Now, of course, the back side of this is probably going to be hotter. Unfortunately, it's just not practical to measure that. So measuring the spacer in a couple places, we're getting between 155 and 160 degrees. So I think it's safe to assume the back side of the ECU is somewhere between 130, 160 degrees. All right, let's do the test with the kit in. We've got the kit installed. Let's do the after test, same exact loop, and we can compare the difference.
A few minutes later.
We have a 98 degree ambient temperature this time. The center of the back of this plate is right at about 140 degrees. Back side of the ECU is at 138, we'll say. Front side there, the best I can get is 142. I can't truly get the front side just because of the angle. I think that goes to show that you're probably at about 140 degrees, whereas before you were anywhere between 130 and 160. So I think there's definitely a slight improvement. Again, I think also having the airflow go through here, not having the engine vibration affecting it. This is a very clean OEM looking install. I didn't really show just how this looks yet, but this looks phenomenal. So I am very, very happy with how it turned out. And for now, we've just kind of pretended that that is okay. So I think you could take this with a little bit of a grain of salt as well, considering it's 10 degrees hotter with the ambient temperature. That obviously is going to impact it too. So I think there's definitely an improvement. That's all for today though, guys. If you enjoyed this video, please give a thumbs up. You can check out this kit if you want to purchase it on Maptune's website, wherever you are in the world. Maptune's website. Keep in mind 2 different part numbers depending on what model year you have. Shout out to Scandinavia Asia Corporation for just designing such an awesome product. But that's all. I'll see you in the next one.